Have you noticed how recently Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Qatar are interested in buying sports teams? Why? Why do you care about golf? Why NBA? Why MLB? Why soccer? Do they know something we don't know? Are they running a printing machine over there that we don't know about? Is it just something they're throwing their money away, or is it an investment they're making? How did UFC, when they bought it in 1993 for $2 million, is now a $12 billion organization? The person that bought the Cowboys in 1960 for $1 million, Cowboys are the most expensive franchise at $8 billion. It's a lot of money being made here. What are the next sports you ought to think about? Is there money in alternative assets? Can you get involved in it? We're going to talk all about that today. If you get value out of this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, but let's get right into it. Look, if you're like me, when you first started watching sports, you just love the game. You're like, oh my God, I love this game. Like I watch baseball saying, what a cool game. These are the stats. This is awesome. Wow, NBA, this is the countdown. This is the shot clock. That's how NHL works, 3 periods. That's how soccer works. What a cool thing this is. And then maybe you and I experienced when you bought your first pack and you opened it up and you got this card and it was $7. And then a year and a half later, you sold the card for $28. You're like, oh my goodness, from $7 to $28, that's 300-400% of money I made as a regular kid. The same way you make your money there as a kid in baseball cards is the same way these billionaires are making money. It's the reason why some people are buying sports teams. By the way, I'll give you a quick story here and then we'll get into all this data. I get a call out of nowhere one day. I'm sitting in the office. This guy calls me saying, hey, are you interested in Wayne Gretzky? I said, I'm happily married. He says, no. Are you interested in Wayne Gretzky rookie cards? The 2 best ones out there, PSA 10. I said, sure, what's the number? Eventually, me and this owner talked. We come up with a number. I end up buying these 2 cards for $540,000. I send one of my guys, Tikran, man I trust. He goes to LA. They meet at PSA headquarters in Newport Beach. The owner brings the cards, drops it off. We give him the money. We exchange. My friend's family, wife, they're like, what are you doing buying a card for $540,000? I said, first of all, alternative assets. Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player of all time. There are not too many of these cards going to be out there. This is a good investment I'm making, and I sat on it. 18 months later, you know what we sold it for at Heritage Auctions? It was a world record at the time. $2.2 million. I made 300% rate of return in a span of what? 18 months. Now, recently I became a minority owner of the Yankees. I'm there, of course, the emotions, all that exciting stuff. Yes, the announcement, great. We're in the stadium, incredible feeling. Celebration. I get the call in Bermuda. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Unbelievable. But guess what? My investment already, based on me starting the ownership process at the valuation of 2022, according to Forbes, Yankees already in 2022 made 18%. And that is the price people buy or sell teams. Yankees, the investment, in less than a year of me owning it, already made 18%. So what is all this world? And Pat, I don't have that kind of money to buy. How can I get involved in this? I understand. This is why I'm kind of getting you to think about this alternative assets, the unconventional way of making investment, not just the mutual fund stocks bonds. So sports teams, NBA started publicly introducing their valuations of team prices in 96. MLB and NFL was 98 and NHL was 2004. Let's look at some of these team prices to see what kind of increases they've had over the years. So what we did is we took the most expensive teams in every league and the least expensive team, and we're showing what kind of rate of return they've had in the last 20 years. Yankees in 2003 was a $730 million franchise. Today it's worth $7.1 billion. It's increased 872%. By the way, Yankees, Steinbrenner originally bought it, I think in 1973, for $8.8 million. That's a thousands of percent rate of return in that organization. Cowboys, 2003, $851 million valuation. Today, $8 billion, an increase of 840%. The Cowboys was bought in 1960 for $1 million. Warriors, $176 million in 2003. Today, they're the most expensive franchise in the NBA, surpassing the Lakers and the Knicks, $7 billion, an increase of, you ready? 3,877%. I believe Shamad sent a tweet. He was a minority owner of the Golden State Warriors when they first bought it for $450 million a few years ago. He said, I went in 10%. He says, my rate of return on my $45 million investment, I ended up getting out at around $500 million is what he made on his $45 million investment. I may be a little bit off on the dollars, but the tweet is out there for you to find. Rangers, hockey, $215 million in 2003. Today, $2.2 billion, a rate of return of 923%. Now let's look at the least valued organizations in each sport and what the rate of return's been. In MLB, Pirates, $163 million. Today, they're worth $1.3 billion. A rate of return still 697. Lions, $509. Today, $3 billion. That's still a rate of return of 489. Kings, $259. $159. Today, $2 billion. That's a rate of return of 672. And last but not least, this one's a tough one here. Coyotes, they're not going to like this. They were a $150 million organization in 03. They're only $450 today, 200%. And when you compare this to the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, on what kind of rate of return that's done since 2000, that's only returned 160.5%. The S&P since 2000 has been around 324%. And when you compare it, every one of the sports teams beat out the rate of return S&P is given, as well as real estate, by a mile, except for the Coyotes. So what does this tell us? That means alternative assets must be something you ought to consider. If you're somebody, I'd say, I'd love to invest into alternative assets, but man, I don't have $10 million. I don't have $5 million. I don't have $1 million. Maybe I can invest 100 grand, maybe 10 grand. How do I do it? Masterworks is a company that allows you to buy into arts, Picasso, Banksy, Andy Warhol, but you buy a share into that art. So if it sells, if it goes up, makes whatever kind of returns it is, you're able to participate in that in smaller fractions as if you're buying a stock into a company. I was at an event in Miami with David Solomon and Goldman Sachs. The entire event at Art Basel was all about the alternative investments. It's something that many, many people are looking at. When you see what happened with S&P 500 last year, worst year since 2008, in the same exact year, auctions with art had a record-breaking year. Same year. Okay, when you see the complete opposite taking place, it's something you ought to consider. If you want to, Masterworks has nearly 750,000 users now. Just like any stock you buy, Masterworks does all the work. They get every item that's going to be registered with the SEC. But if you want to consider participating with Masterworks and investing, click on the link below. Join the other 750,000 subscribers that are part of Masterworks. By the way, here's a chart from 2002, how each league does versus S&P 500. If you look at the numbers, S&P 500 is the orange one, NFL is green, MLB is purple, NBA is blue, and NHL is black. Look at S&P 500 2002 versus 2020. S&P is 334%, beating out NHL. NBA is all the way at the top at 852. MLB is second at 548% rate of return, and NFL is at 472%. So what's caused this increased valuation in these organizations over the last 10 years? Well, if we look at four things that determine the revenue of a franchise, you look at media rights, gate revenue, sponsorships, and merchandising. If you look at this year in 2013, look what was at the lowest. The lowest was that blue color, which represents media rights. Then it was merchandising. Then it was sponsorship. Then gate revenue. But look at what happened today. Media rights went from last to first. Merchandising is now last. Then you have sponsorship, which was second. Now it's third. And gate revenue went from first to second. What causes that? Eyeballs, interest. People are watching this. By the way, this is one of the things that the reason why cable is still around, a lot of it is simply because of sports. But wait till you see what OTT is doing. Watch ticket prices in the NFL from 2006 till 2022. The average ticket price in 2006 was $62.38. The average ticket price today is $111.75. So let's unpack this media rights by different sports and see how big this number is. When you look at the NFL in 2022, the NFL signed a new media rights deal with Amazon, ESPN, Fox, CBS, and NBC worth, ready? $113 billion over 11 years. This is the largest media rights deal in sports history. MLB in 22 signed a new media rights deal as well with Fox, Turner Sports, ESPN for $30 billion over 7 years. This is the largest media rights deal in MLB history. NBA in 2021 signed a new media rights deal with ESPN, Turner Sports, Amazon for $24 billion over 7 years. This was their largest. And by the way, there's a special caveat here because notice how the NBA owners don't like to bash China. You're wondering why. In 2015, the NBA signed a $1.5 billion per year deal with Tencent, giving it exclusive rights to broadcast NBA games. China's market's massive. I can only imagine what that could be if these guys are nicer to China. Hence, they always protect China. There's a reason for it. NHL 2021, they signed a new media rights deal with ESPN, TNT, and Hulu for $4.9 billion over 7 years. This is their largest, but there's the least amount of interest for NHL simply based on dollars. Remember how earlier I said cable is able to be around because of sports and all the stuff that we watch on cable, and then OTT got into the sports game? Watch the data here on OTT. In 2016, OTTs were only spending $100 million a year on sports. 2017 goes to $400 million, then $900 million, then $1.8 billion, then $2 billion, then $2.9 billion, then $5.2 billion estimated. $8.5 billion in 2023 and climbing. And if you look at the numbers in 2023, blue is North American, which is doubling. Orange is Europe, which is about the same. And the rest of the world is the gray. This scares the crap out of cable because cable companies are sitting there saying, what if these guys no longer need us? or want us. And these OTT companies are able to give the kind of money we've been giving for years. We've had a monopoly on this. This is not good. So that's one factor. You know what else has changed the game in a big way? Massive way? Sports betting. This is the event. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down a federal ban on sports betting in May of 2018. Once they did that, it was mayhem with sports betting. In 2019, $900 million. In 2020, $1.5 billion. In 2021, $4.3 billion. In 2022, $7.5 billion. Where do you think it's going to next? It'll be $50 billion in no time, just sports betting per year. And according to AmericanGaming.org, Major League Baseball alone stands to gain $1.1 billion in projected revenue from legal sports betting. NFL is going to gain roughly $2.3 billion. NBA could increase by $585 million, and NHL could increase by $216 million. As if this isn't already enough, look at the kind of companies that are signing contracts with sports teams. Ready? NFL in 2019 signed a 10-year deal with DraftKings. NBA in 2021 signed a 10-year deal with FanDuel. MLB in 2023 signed a multi-year deal with FanDuel. And NHL in 2022 signed a 7-year deal with BetMGM. By the way, I got a few different reasons why this is taking place, but one of the things that's happened with social media is the world went from being very big, we didn't know each other, to very small the moment we're all on social. So imagine you're in a complete different country, you see a highlight video for an NFL team here that's going viral in Germany, and that kid's like, that's a pretty cool game. I want to kind of see about NFL. Now there's interest in Europe, South America, Central America, Middle East. They're interested in sports more today because social media expanded the market and made the world a smaller place because we're all connected now. So now, how are these sports franchises valued? It's based on a few different factors. Number one is the popularity of the sport. Number two is the success of the team. Number three is the strength of the market. Number four is the stadium or the arena. Number five is team purchase. Think about it like if you bought a house for $600,000, 5 years later, your neighbor sells us out for $2.2 million. You're all of a sudden saying, wait a minute, my house is now worth $2.2 million. That's what happened in the NBA. Everybody thought their team was worth $300, $400, $500 million until Donald Sterling was asked to leave the NBA and sell his team, the Clippers, which was bought by Ballmer for $2.2 billion. Overnight, NBA owners were like, thank you, Steve Ballmer. You made us a couple $2 billion just because they bought the Clippers for $2.2 billion. And of course, you have to consider the financial strength of the organization. Now, there's something happening right now where a lot of the wealthy folks in America are not too happy about it, because imagine you're able to go buy a place and you have money, you can buy this place, but the other guy's got $50 million, he's sitting on cash, you're only sitting on $5 million on cash. You're like, dude, I'm willing to pay you $4 million. It's like, you know what? I'll overpay by $3 million. I'll pay you $7 million. You're like, I can't pay $7 million, but the other guy can't. That's what's happening in sports right now. And here's who's causing it. Sovereign wealth funds are starting to realize that sports franchises, non-duplicatable assets, are becoming great investments. But some people worry that sovereign wealth funds from countries with poor human rights records could use their ownership of sports teams to influence American culture and politics. For example, the Qatar Investment Authority, which owns a stake in the Washington Wizards, has been criticized for its treatment of migrant workers in Qatar. Meanwhile, some people worry that sovereign wealth funds have an unfair advantage over other investors in the sports market. This is because they often have access to large amounts of capital and can afford to pay higher prices for sports teams, while maybe some people in America can't. For example, you'll say, yeah, that thing's worth $2.2 billion. We'll pay you $2.4 billion. They'll come in and say, yeah, it's worth $2.4 billion. Here's $3.6 billion. We're not worried about it. You know what that does? Like, I can't compete with you. What happens if all of a sudden they buy 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 teams? What if in the next 20 years, these sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East own half the teams? Literally think about if that actually takes place. Now, I'm sure someone eventually is going to go out there and, campaign and lobby and say, you can't have that. Maybe we can only have 10% of teams or 20% of the teams, but that day is coming. Let me give you some stories of what's really taking place right now. Qatar Investment Authority in 2023 acquired a 5% stake in Monumental Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Washington Wizards, Washington Capitals, and Washington Mystics. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund in 2022 acquired a controlling stake in Newcastle. This is an English Premier League. Bahrain Mumtalakat Holding Company in 2022 acquired a minority stake in Cleveland Cavaliers. Abu Dhabi United Group in 2008 acquired Manchester City. Kuwait Investment Authority in 2019 acquired a minority stake in the Dodgers. Live Golf has paid some players some $800 million to leave the PGA Tour to join its team. While some may say, Pat, that's not a lot. That's a small minority amount. I know, but it always kind of gets started like that, and like I buy this land and that land and this land and holy shit, you want all of it now. It starts like that, so we kind of have to be aware to see who's buying what, because now they're starting to have a lot of influence. So the question becomes, a lot of people may say, Pat, so what's left? Is this it? Yeah, I can't get into these guys. These are too overpriced. Yes, but there are other sports and leagues that are coming out. You just have to watch very closely what's going on. Remember earlier I talked about how in 1993 they bought UFC for $2 million. Today it's a $12 billion organization. You know how much money return that is? 10 on 2 is 20, 100 is 200, 1,000 is 2 billion. So you got 6,000 times return on your investment on $2 million. That's what happened with UFC. What else is this happening to? It happened to MLS. There was a big push of buying MLS organizations. The average MLS top line revenue right now is $45 million. And what people are paying for it is around 12.2 times the top line revenue. It's what the market's currently paying for. You may say 12.2, okay, what's the big deal with that? The average MLS team you could buy in 1996 for $10 million. Today, the average MLS team is $550 million. We can look at other sports or industries. Esports. People are like, esports? Are you serious? Yes, esports. From $350 million in 2018 to $1.4 billion today. Pickleball teams are now selling for $5 million. Pat, pickleball? Let me give you some stats on pickleball. 36.5 million people in America play pickleball in 2023. 18 to 34, largest age bracket for pickleball players, that's 29%. $153 million of pickleball paddle market size in 2021. It's up 159% over 3 years. 10,320 number of places now for pickleball to play in US, and it's forecasted to grow 7.7% compound annual growth rate through 2028. That's pickleball. By the way, I got approached by a rugby team saying, do you want to buy a rugby team for $3 million because rugby is going to be going in America? You got lacrosse, you got a bunch of different things that are coming. This is not going to slow down. You see the whole slap thing, the slap game that's coming that Dana White's like, yeah, we'd be interested in that. There's going to be opportunities. Keep your eyes open. FYI, let this just be an example to you that you ought to pay attention to alternative assets. It could be cards, it could be teams, it could be art, it could be different things. If you can't do it at the higher level, you can go on at a smaller level, but it's definitely something you ought to pay attention to. If you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And before you invest into art, watch this video before doing so. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.